Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, October 25th, 2017 to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Mr. Alexandrovich.
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mrs. Larson.
Here.
And I am here.
Thank you. The meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is community comment. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Is there any comment tonight? Any comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5, consent agenda. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is school board announcements. First, we have an announcement from Mrs. Catherine Reed. Would you like to come up to the microphone? Hi, welcome.
Now.
Is that better? You may have heard of the Pathways to Your Future Night. You're receiving a flyer currently, and it is also posted on the high school website and has been announced on the district website. Communications have gone out to families about the Pathways Night. We invite you all to attend. We'd love to see you there if you're able. This is a new opportunity based on academic and career planning work that the district has done, along with feedback from our Education for Employment team. We learned that we wanted to do something different and go beyond just providing information for students about how to plan for their days after high school and what they wanted to do. This new opportunity brings 8th grade through 12th grade students and parents together with folks from area business and industry, higher education, and our teachers at the high school to learn about the multiple options that they have available to them in high school and beyond, and the skills and habits that they need to be successful when they're at Franklin High School and when they're pursuing their options afterward. So the event happens Monday, November 13, begins at 5:30 until 8 p.m. We have a keynote opening speaker. Mr. Cohn will be addressing the audience briefly to open the session and set the tone for us. And we will have 7 breakout sessions. Parents and students are able to choose 2 of those options to attend. In the evening, we also have a resource fair that folks will be able to browse and visit with higher ed options, folks from the high school who can explain more details about what they can do in various opportunities at the high school, in addition to ACT preparation and things like that. Our goal is to give students and parents the tools they need to make informed decisions based on information and input from the experts from the community. So I invite you to come.
Thank you for coming to make the announcement to the board, Mrs. Reed. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other announcements from the board?
Just want to say the Education Foundation event is coming up. If you haven't got your tickets, they're still available.
Thank you. I'm pleased to announce that I'll be attending the 8th Annual National Convening of Personalized Learning on October 31st at the Wisconsin Center as a CISA Board of Control member. It's a 2-day convening, and it's an opportunity for educators to come together from across the country to discuss emerging best practices, lessons learned, and introduce new topics or aspects of personalized learning. And then I'll also be attending the Forest Park Middle School Student of the Month breakfast on November 10th. Any other announcements? Okay, thank you. And item 7 is the school board calendar. We have a regular board meeting on Wednesday, November 8th, 2017 at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular board meeting on Wednesday, December 13th, 2017 at 6 o'clock p.m., both here at the ECC. Item 8, reports and presentations. We have 8A, the architect's presentation. We have Mr. Devin Kack and Ms. Paige Nielsen. Welcome.
Good evening,
Hi.
and thank you for having us back again. You might recognize, or not recognize, you might see a new face here. Nick Kent is not here tonight. He's actually at the A4LE convention, which is a nationwide convention to explore and understand and hear innovative new concepts in architecture for educational environments. To keep us at Plunkett Research Architects on the cutting edge to better serve you, our clients, and the students and staff that you provide services to. Paige Nielsen is here. She's a project specialist and is as knowledgeable about this project as myself, Nick, and many of your team. So I'm excited to have her here with me. Tonight we get to share the interior design of the new Forest Park Middle School. The last time that I was here, we spoke and we reviewed concepts that played a role in the exterior design. While we had begun and through the process of the design for the interior, we really kept those in our minds, clean and organized, simple and inviting, contemporary but not trendy, structured, not organic. We reviewed those ideas also with the core project beliefs, which really distilled down into designing the new Forest Park Middle School for staff and students for today and also into the future through flexibility, visibility, and accountability, while also providing an asset that's accessible to the community. I really think we've hit all those, but obviously you guys will be the judge of that when we share this with you. As Paige hooks her laptop up here, I'd first like to say thank you to your staff and leadership committee. Their dedication and collaboration with us, the architects, with our engineers, with JP Cullen, the construction manager, and everybody that's had to be on site through many different building tours, presentations and whatnot. It has been phenomenal and outstanding, and I can't say thank you enough for that. With that, if I can direct your attention behind you, we'll begin. So because we're using Revit, we're using building integrated modeling. While we're drawing, you've seen the image on the right-hand side, the floor plan that's colored. Not only are we drawing in 2Ds, but we're also drawing in 3 dimensions. So that's been able to give us this model, which you're seeing on the left, that we'll walk through. Something to kind of keep in mind is that the colors, depending on how old the lamp is, the monitors, the colors can be off a little bit at times. And then also something else is we're currently working with the district to go through furniture selections and make sure that those are appropriate. So knowing that when you see the furniture that's in the spaces, they're kind of placeholders for the time being, and we're incorporating many of the concepts that are employed at the high school. So With that, we've just stepped into the vestibule, and we'll actually take a brief moment to walk into the admin suite before we look at the commons, which is very exciting to share with you. As we step into the admin suite, we're providing a very welcoming, person-first focused entrance with admin on the left and pupil services on the right. The motif that you see behind the wall and surrounding the Forest Park Middle School is an abstract of the canopy of a tree, as you can think of a forest and what you might look at, providing some kind of playful notes within this very professional and inviting environment. As we walk through, you're now going through the secure entry sequence that anyone will have to go through as visitors are checking in or visiting staff coming throughout the day, or anybody after standard entry and exit during the day. What you're seeing in front of you here is the student commons. Now, this isn't only a cafeteria. You know, it will be used for a few periods during the day. This is a great asset, not only to this school, but to the district and the community. This flexible learning environment will be used throughout the day by staff and students, and even for in-services and other functions after hours. You're seeing beyond, there's some openings on the back wall. Those are the serving lines. Just use the pointer here. And a lot of, there's clear story windows that will allow a lot of ample natural daylight into the space. Something that is currently missing from the high school cafeteria, if you will. Now we'll walk down the main corridor. Walking east right now, you'll see the window at the end of the hallway. We're walking by a business ed classroom on the left, providing a lot of visibility to and from the classrooms, so as students are going out into breakout spaces and into the commons, which is also intended to be used as a breakout space. Next to the right, we're actually looking into the fabrication lab. What you're seeing on the left, or right in front of you in the foreground is, as my laser pointers died, are tables that would have chairs at them, obviously, that can be rearranged for a lecture style as needed, and also broken out into a collaborative working environment. On the left, there'll be 3D printers, which will be sharing students' creations as they pass during passing time. There's additional project storage for students. And then if you look through the windows connecting the fabrication lab, we walk into manufacturing. So this is where you will find metals and woods. All of the kind of ghosted rectangles in the distance there are pieces of equipment that have been very carefully choreographed by Nick Cohn and our team. Again, work tables for students and project storage. The idea for the fabrication and manufacturing is really to give the students exposure, to new and creative ways to explore learning through digital technology and also hands-on learning. This space is thought of with the colors to be more of in lines of a clean manufacturing space, as a student or someone might find in their day-to-day, potentially for a future career or on a visit to a new business that might be located here in Franklin.
Devin, can you pause a second and show on the map on the right where we...
Absolutely, and thank you, Judy. So the plan on the right, here's the vestibule which we walked in and then went into the admin reception area. We then stopped into the main corridor here, don't let the color fool you. This is an open area that's separated, clearly delineated with the columns, so where the tables and chairs are to where a circulation path would be. And then we've walked down this corridor here. This is fabrication here, and manufacturing is the space immediately to the south of that. You can see the connection that we're providing not only through physical means with overhead doors, much like you have at the high school through the 3D and digital art, but also through the glass, providing accountability, visibility, and also access for staff and students to, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and you can still be seen, and a teacher can quickly attend to that need. If you'll pause here for a second, Paige. We've got on the right the floor plan. I'm highlighting one of our typical wings. We have five wings. Each one is delineated by a different color. This is a subtle way to provide wayfinding for students. Sixth graders coming to a brand new two-story building might be confused where they're going. This is something that can aid in that. Or as students go to a certain special, they can be guided by a homeroom or another teacher saying, oh, it's not a big deal. We just go down to the blue wing or to the red wing. It's a nice way to provide subtle wayfinding. And again, much of the building is in a neutral tone. Go ahead and start walking down that corridor. That lends itself to a timeless nature, where these accents of color are just subtle kind of pops throughout the building. As we're looking down the typical corridor of our typical wing, we're starting to see the flare of the classrooms to provide breakout space that's adjacent to the mall. At the very end of that hallway, you're seeing windows. Again, we've tried we've really been excited to be able to provide views outside from nearly all of the spaces within the building. It's important not to just have dead-end corridors that we're looking at blank walls, but to allow natural daylight and a kind of a sense of respite as one could gaze out the window. If we just walk into now a typical classroom, and again, like I mentioned, we're working together with furniture, with the district, with color selections, all that kind of stuff for what that might be. A typical kind of teaching wall, the rooms are really set up for flexibility, so that a teacher can move around within the room and use different technology to teach their current unit or instruction. But each room is currently designed with writable wall surface on a good portion of the walls, and also a monitor that can either be directly or wirelessly plugged into for staff and also for student presentations. Each typical classroom has a set of casework that you're seeing here on the left, and also a view out to the breakout area, a view out to a corridor. Right now in the existing middle school and even at the high school, students are going out into the corridor and using these areas of the hallway as learning spaces. Now we're providing that access and that connection back to staff so that the student feels accountable, they have visibility, and they can also go and assist if they need to. Majority of the classrooms, nearly all of them, have connection just like the high school does between classrooms, so that co-teaching can occur, or perhaps that room isn't being used at that time. A group might be able to go out and break out into that space. It could be 5, it could be 6, could be 10, it could be 2, much like you would use the hallway. So giving flexible spaces back to staff and students was of the utmost design consideration. Now, as we walk through, again, these paired classrooms, we'll kind of pause here for a second, and you'll get to see the start of that connection here with the visibility, which actually occurs right in this area in the plan. What you're seeing, and Paige, go ahead and start walking out there, is a project room. So providing flexibility, not every space is exactly the same. There's a couple project rooms that are kind of nestled into classrooms that provide additional flexibility. All of the rooms are typically nearly the exact same size. They're all rectangular, which is very important. But again, to provide that flexibility. As we look down again at the breakout, just an accent of color. These colors typically happen where we have group collaboration, breakout or project rooms. Again, that view to the exterior. These breakout areas, again, which occur on both floors, in all of the wings, will have visibility from the classrooms, and also these project rooms that will enable students that either need a little bit more quiet or potentially a little more of a louder environment to rehearse a presentation that they might have. As we walk down the corridor, if we, over on the plan, on the first floor here, and then also on the second floor in this location, and also in this location on the second floor, we have our science rooms. Those are organized so that they have good access to what you'll see as the learning commons and also the fabrication, as well as to flexible areas, whether it be breakouts or the project rooms, and again, as we've seen as a theme, to each other, so that co-teaching and flexibility can happen. Here you're seeing how students might have moved their furniture to provide peninsulas for their lab experiments. Students could be sitting here and discussing what just happened while their experiment might be incubating for a certain period of time, and hypothesizing on what the conclusion might be. As we walk back out to the commons, you'll see another one of those wayfinding elements with a colored accent wall. And as we happen into the commons, you'll see those colors tied in with some of the fabric selections, and as we move upstairs with carpeting. If you'll pause just here for a quick second, Paige, you want to actually just back out a little bit? And then come back over here. Perfect. That was a column. So again, here, we're in the commons, but again, this is a flexible learning environment. We're providing a project room that is nestled here underneath a learning area that's on the second floor. These learning steps, these potentially can be used for eating, for performances, and also for collaborative group work. As a student might, a teacher might bring their entire class out and give a small demonstration or a lecture, and then break out on those spaces. We'll go ahead and we'll start walking upstairs. You also note the hints of warmth with either the wood or wood look elements to provide some warmth. The exterior, we spent a good deal of care kind of thinking about the existing or surrounding context of the area and also of Franklin in general with those warm tones, trying to draw that warmth in a few select areas. that a majority of the students they will use every day. Here, this is the Learning Commons. This is a re-envisioned library. Again, this could not happen without the collaboration and innovation that your staff has shared with us, staff and leadership team. On the left is the circulation desk. So almost more of a learning concierge, if you think of maybe even like an Apple store, where someone is out and able to assist you with finding what you need maybe a little more accessible because of how the design is or how they might float through and collaborate with those students that are out here. We've got flexible furniture shown here in the foreground, and if Paige pans to the left, we'll see our area of stacks. So while students are one-to-one and moving almost completely paper-free at times, those resources are still available. You'll see in the floor pattern here in the carpet stripes of color. These colors are the wings of the school coming together in kind of the heart of the school here in the Learning Commons. So we've got a wing that's green, we've got a wing that's blue, we've got a wing that's red. You've seen a purple. There's a teal. We spent a lot of time deliberating on what those colors might be. So, in the distance here is an engineering lab. What's unique about this space is not only does it directly connect to the Learning Commons, but it has direct access via a stair that goes down to the fabrication, therefore connecting the first floor to the second floor. Students might start their coursework for fabrication up here in this area, break out in the Learning Commons, and then potentially move downstairs as they begin to 3D print their latest creation. Or on the plan on the right, we're in this kind of darker brown area. We've walked up the stairs here. The circulation desk is in this area that I'm highlighting, and we're looking now toward the engineering lab here. Stacks are in this area, again with a view to the exterior, allowing natural daylight to enter the building and really penetrate kind of deeper into the core. Here's your red accent entry to a wing, and then also a blue. Again, the carpeting colors helps tie all those different wings together in these common spaces, which you'll see as a theme throughout a few of the spaces that we go through. Here's what a student might view as they're walking down the main stair that connects the first floor to second floor. Just beyond us, there will be a couple of doors that actually will close off the second story so that this space can be used after hours. As we walk through the commons, you'll also see another pair of doors that I'll note when we get there so that we can, again, segment the building down even further if you didn't want the commons to be accessed. This is the view that you're seeing right now is of, if you pause there for a second, Paige, is a built-in seating area with outlets up above. It's inevitable that people have to plug in, even though we've requested that everybody, oops, sorry, Paige, everybody come charged to school, correct? So not only can staff, but students can also use this as a recharge and a place to maybe gather with friends or to focus on their individual schoolwork. This is facing west, so to the right you would see the building that we're in now. As we enter the event lobby, this pair of doors, the four doors that we walked through there, was the other area where the building can be closed off. So where we just walked through is these doors here. So this whole area of the building can be segmented off for public or for after-hours use. The event lobby, this is the event entry right here to the right. I'll highlight it right here in the plan. We are the Wildcats. We're providing a dignified way for students, for grandparents, for staff to wait for an event to happen, for graduation or other event that could happen, with a few built-in benches that can also be used for collaboration. As we all know, that students learn whether they're laying on the floor, they're kneeling on a chair, they're sitting on a table. No one's going to sit on a table here. I promise your staff will help them with that, or sitting proper. So providing those different areas to learn. Now we'll walk into the new three-station gym. So the three-station gym has 3 practice courts and 1 competition court. There's various lines that are set up for different functions with striping, just like any other gym. We've got bleachers on either side that pull out for the competition court, so that the court becomes, this gym becomes a community asset. And also for the different schools in the district. A lot of hard work and dedication and emails back and forth and phone calls have gone into the design that you're currently seeing. And it's exciting to show you the Forest Park Wildcats home court. We'll kind of speed up a little bit as we, yeah, it's a sizable gym. Here you're looking toward the parent drop-off doors. These doors are located down here on the south side of the building. The parent loop is here. The athletic fields are down here, and a majority of the parking on site. So this will become an entry point for students, parents and visitors for after hours of functions. Concessions located here. We're kind of playfully amping up the design as one might be ready to enter a raucous basketball or wrestling tournament. As we walk into the music suite, we'll step into one of the 2 smaller rooms that are just so happen to be set up with risers in it. Here again, you're seeing the hints of the colors of the wings, and again in the floor, that help tie the school together, all the different wings, the different grades. Instrument storage. As you've all seen at the high school, you can, you always need more. So trying to plan for that now instead of having to add anything later. This would be the band room with the hard surface flooring. Again, tying in the colors of the school. There'd be whiteboards in each of these spaces, and also projection screens that will allow technology to be shared and instruction to be given to students. Immediately to our right are the offices for the music teachers. Again, with visibility to and from those classrooms, and also out to a major entry point to the suite through the windows that you're seeing here. As we walk back to the Commons, I'd ask if there's any comments or questions or.
It's pretty wild to imagine that this is going to be filled with 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. Seems like pretty advanced. It's pretty wild. Cats.
The one classroom you mentioned that was directly across from the Commons, I think you said it was a type of business?
Correct.
That's the only classroom near the Commons?
Immediately, that I would say is immediately off of the Commons, correct. It does have, there's a connection actually to the other business education room. But yeah, that's the only space that was directly off of there, besides actually a project room that you're seeing here. And then, Paige, if you'll move slightly to the right, you actually get a glimpse of manufacturing space down the hallway here.
So it's not, I guess it's not too busy of an area to have all glassed in, the front of the classroom like that. With lunch being there, I mean, it's not all day, so, I mean, was that considered?
Yeah, there was, you know, obviously before we get to this plan, we went through many different iterations, and we actually had larger flexible space that could be used for instruction along there. That was moved. The position of the space, well, it is slightly shielded by the stairs and the steps. Again, I say slightly.
You said something about doors. You were coming off of the library area up there. There
Yeah,
doors.
there's a pair of doors that actually will slide out of the wall here and here to close off that second floor, to allow for the commons to just be open. And then again, that happens just with standard doors for the lower or the first floor as well. We've looked at many different ways to allow the community to be able to use the building, going to the extent of even putting a pair of doors kind of down by the event entry, where the potential for the district to open up and have restrooms accessible for outdoor functions that can happen on the playfields.
You said the commons can get separated too? There was gonna be some.
Yeah, there's a pair of doors here, and then the wings lock down, and then back farther, and then again upstairs, as I was highlighting on the screen. And this is obviously a major space that incorporates a lot of flexibility. Working with Mark and everybody, you know, we're still looking at the furniture, because when this, you know, it does still function as a cafeteria, being able to kind of accelerating and cleaning certain areas of it so that you can turn it back over to for flexibility is also something that is considered throughout the design. So there's a lot of things that have gone into many meetings, even a coordination meeting here today for the gym panel. So it's very exciting.
How does that tiered section really work with kids? I mean, it's pretty high up, and
So each section allows for a student to sit and also a student to traverse or walk behind them, so that you're not sitting on each other's feet, getting in each other's way. They would access that via the stair that's shown in gray on the left.
is it like a trendy feature that, or, you know, talk about timeless? I just wonder what that's gonna look like.
I do think that this is timeless for this design, and I say that because of its location and its purpose. There's another project that you might be thinking of that has a similar feature, but it doesn't have good visibility to it. This has amazing visibility from many different angles, whether it's kitchen staff, just staff with students bringing their classes here, or administration that might be in the office or traveling to and from other places in the building. We weren't going for a performance venue because we've got the Sabre Center. So this allows a little taste of that here at the middle school. Talking with the band teachers, Mr. Meyer is very excited for his spaghetti dinner to be housed here, and the ability for the students to perform for everybody that's there.
So you could take your instrument and perform on one of those stairs? That's how
Or-
wide
or-
they are?
Or
wide?
sing.
Oh.
And envision that it's a similar design for the areas at the high school as well.
Correct, yeah. So
Which
the
are used for-
visibility is.
Smaller groups have used it.
The
When I've
visibility
toured,
is
there's been
improved.
smaller project groups or,
That many tiers, though. The one at the high school doesn't have nearly as many tiers as this.
Correct.
This is like double the number of tiers. How many kids would fit on there?
It was, it's between 120 to 160 that can go there. So you can get, and again, it's seen as providing a different function that's flexible for the space.
We did talk to another school district that has one like this, because we weren't sure how kids would react with it. And the principal said they absolutely love it. They use it for a lot of things, and they just made it, part of what they talk to kids about is using it appropriately, and it's not the gym. This is, you can sit on here, but it isn't for running up and down and jumping, and he said they haven't really had any problems.
I guess I could see half as many and then just a flat area that is more like stage-like as opposed to all the way up. But
Yeah,
that's
there-
just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I kind of wondering about that.
There is a larger flat area. There's an expanded landing, just about 2/3 of the way up where the
there is?
cursor is right now.
Oh.
It's just a little bit deeper. The other idea was also that for an actual stage, that it be left flexible so that furniture could actually be brought in, because that same stage could then be used for a graduation that might be housed in the gymnasium. So instead of building something in that could potentially become an obstruction to the overall space, it can be set up as it's needed. So it would then go in front. If we look at the plan, something could go in front here, and then that same piece of furniture could also be placed here as a graduation platform for students to walk across.
Can I also ask, what's the ceiling in the gym? I know we're not in the gym right now, but what kind of ceiling is that?
The ceiling is an exposed acoustical deck in the gym. Here, what you're seeing, and that one is painted white. This one is, sorry, this one is painted out darker, so that the wood look ceiling can really become a design element, providing that warmth that I was talking about to the space. This is an acoustical deck, so it does absorb sound. These clouds will do the same. And then we've got acoustical ceiling tile, similar to other buildings in here, but in a 2x2 fashion to absorb any sound. There's also some acoustical wall panels along the upper clear story windows that will let natural daylight into the space.
And the furniture's not settled? I see you have the high-top tables a lot.
Correct. The furniture is still being worked on, but the idea is that you give people, students and staff, varied surfaces. But again, no, we're working together
I'm just
currently
wondering,
to-
middle schoolers aren't all, that tall. Would that
Correct.
Might be a challenge for someone, I'm just, and maybe, right, they have lower seating, but maybe they wanna. I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking. Seems to be a challenge for middle school.
I think overall, really well done. I think the art, science, athletic space looks fantastic. The classroom spaces, I think, are agile. Having recently toured the current middle school, I think it meets the needs of having flexible spaces all around. In addition to smartly painting walls as whiteboards versus purchasing whiteboards and installing and deinstalling. It's something that's very modern. A concern of mine, however, is when we get to the wings and the expanded area of the wings, we have 6 classrooms, all potentially releasing at the same time and having 120 plus students. That furniture in that area would seem to almost clutter the space, knowing that the current walkways and hallways are, like 10, 12 feet wide, max, and it's ridiculous to walk through there. And so we might be talking about 20, 25, 35 feet wide, right, in the widest area. I still think with 120 students, it would be chaotic. So I would just hope that we consider some of the space with furniture. But in terms of design, I think, you definitely took to heart the comments we provided about the timelessness, what will the space look like 10 years from now, and will it still be relevant? I also like the branding around the athletic space. I would love to see the similar branding in the main office with the Wildcat logo or something, rather than some abstract tree that might be a fad in 2 years and then go out of style. But I think overall, it's a great space.
Thanks.
Yeah, I really like the design. I think it's really sleek. I especially like the commons area compared to a regular cafeteria. I think it's more mature for middle school. I think the students will appreciate it. Yeah, it's what we asked for.
I think the use of natural light everywhere is great. We give it a really bright look. And that commons gives it a really big feel too.
And the library, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty sleek. Yeah.
Great. Well, again, thank you for giving us not only the opportunity to present to you tonight, but to work on this project with you and your staff. It's been amazing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 8B is the annual health report with Mrs. Lori O'Neill and Mrs. Molly Cowell. Am I saying that? Call? Okay. And welcome. I don't think we've had you here before, so welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for having us. Like you said, Janet, my name is Lori O'Neill, and I am the district nurse who primarily covers the elementary schools. As you said, Molly Call is new here. She's been here for the past 2 months, comes with a tremendous amount of expertise and has shown herself very well, and she's a great asset to the district. So, welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Do you want to tell them a little bit about where you came from in your experience?
Sure. It's nice to meet with you all tonight. I am Molly. I came from almost 13 years at Children's Hospital. For the last 5 years or so, I was an advanced practice nurse on one of the specialty non-ICU units. So what does that mean? I had oversight for clinical practice outcomes and education for the staff on that unit. And it was primarily children who were admitted for a specialty concern. So a lot of kids with diabetes, cystic fibrosis, chronic GI illnesses. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to work with children in a different setting in the community and see what life outside the hospital walls is like. And so far, I've learned a whole lot.
Did you all have the opportunity to see our report? There's just a couple things that I will talk about, and please stop me and ask any questions as I go along. The first page is a little bit of an introduction talking about our roles in the staff that provide the health services to the students in the district. Page 3 kind of expands on that. We have a variety of students with both acute and chronic health needs. Just, it's something new every day. But we spoke to some of the most common things that Molly and I work with staff about. We closely work with families and with staff. We have numerous phone calls and meetings, formal, informal, both with medical providers, community providers, staff and parents to ensure that the students are cared for while at school. You will see the 911 calls on page 4 that were made throughout the district for the last school year. Adam Remington provided us that information. So you see
Can I
those.
ask you about
Yes.
that? And you might not know the answers since
Sure.
you didn't provide it.
Sure.
The Franklin High School EMS calls, 11 of them.
Yes.
So since Captain Remington provided that, do you know if those 11 calls were all for students during the day, or could they possibly be for the sporting events, or?
Those were all during the day for either student or staff member.
Okay, thank you.
I had asked him to have just the data during the school day.
Okay, thank you.
On page 5, you see health room visits and medication administration. The medication administration is new to the report this year. I thought it would be good to highlight for you all the amount of medications that we have in each school building. So you'll see that there. I did note that there are self-carried medications up at the high school, over-the-counter medications, so you'll see quite a number of those.
And if I can ask about Robinwood on the
Yes.
health room visits?
Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of health room visits. Is there a concern at Robinwood that maybe some students that
Sure.
visit for some other reason? Because I'm looking at also the medication
Sure.
administration, and it's not out of whack compared to other schools.
Sure. I can tell you that Robinwood is the biggest elementary school we have. And if I could identify one sole reason why there are more health room visits, I would. It is something I'm looking into, knowing that there is not an overly different population of students there. So I'm grateful that the students at Robinwood feel comfortable going into the health room, and I know the staff there are very diligent with their documentation, so
Okay.
they're very busy, I can tell you that much.
Okay.
And then also Ben Franklin maybe looks a little low. I mean, do you think it might be? We've seen this data a number of years now. We always have seen them. Is there any plans to try and get consistent reporting? Wouldn't it be important to make sure that?
And the staff in each office who works in the health room does document the health room visits as they are able. They know that it's important for us to know every time a student is cared for, so that documentation is important, and I know that they do their best to have all of that documentation in there.
But it is our school secretaries that are often doing this, correct? So that they're busy with other things as
Correct.
the students are coming in? Okay.
So primarily at the elementary schools, it's the office assistant and the school secretary that will tackle the health room.
Thank you.
Regarding the medication administration, currently we're working to finalize some electronic medication documentation. Currently it's done on paper. We are working to have that done electronically. That would allow Molly and myself the ability to see real-time documentation of medications so we can better know what's going on from anywhere in any school building. Additionally, that will allow us to alert parents of low amounts of medications, of dates of expiration for their medications, to hopefully make that process a little bit smoother. On page 6, you'll see quite a big table of health conditions. You'll see some of those are newly asked this year, which is why there is data just for the past school year. I'd like to highlight that there are 149 life-threatening allergies that we know of in district. And I know that has been increasing in my time, and I'm curious to see how that data will trend in the upcoming years. Do you guys have any questions about any of that data? Regarding communicable diseases, we work closely with our community partners and the Franklin Health Department during times of communicable disease in the school and in the community. As you guys may know, last year there was quite a bit of pertussis in the community and in district, so we work closely with the health department and the State Department of Health to figure out best practice in action that we would need to take. Immunizations, last year again, our compliance was 99.86%, and it has been above 99% for 17 years. We are trending this year to have the same above 99% with our compliance. So Molly and I, this is the time of year where we are doing quite a bit of work with immunizations to make sure our students are in compliance with state law. The last page just talks about some of the screenings that we do in collaboration with the health department.
What grade do you do those vision and audio screenings then?
K-4.
Okay.
6 get visual but not audio.
And you do BMI,
Yes,
every kid?
K-246. Parents get letters from the health department knowing that those screenings are coming. The parents in 1st, 3rd, and 5th can request that if they have concern for vision, hearing. Of course, they can come to us at any point. They can also come to the health department at any point because we don't have the tools to do audio screens here, but the health department will happily take referrals from us or any community member.
If I could go back to page 6 to your conditions and illnesses.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
No
The
worries.
concussions,
Mhm.
they've really decreased over the past few years. And, you know, with the state statute that requires reporting of a concussion, is there an opinion on that as to whether students just are not reporting that they have a concussion so they won't be taken out of a sport? Or
Sure.
with such a drop in the numbers?
Yeah, you know, we've noticed that there was a drop in the number. Know that if any district member, coach, anybody employed by the district is aware of a concussion, there are very specific rules that we need to follow. So I can't say that there would never be a student that would have sustained an injury that may not tell, but anybody in district, we need to report that. You know, so that number may be a bit higher, but, you know, we rely on the students and parents sometimes, especially if it happens at an outside, at home or at an outside athletic something, to ensure that they tell us. Molly and I are going to do some more work on concussion and how the protocols go in all the different buildings, and just to ensure that we have the most accurate data and can keep our students safe.
But I have noticed the staff at the middle school and the high school have been very impressive as far as everyone is very aware of what the law is. So they're very quick to make sure that exactly what you're alluding to, that any students who have any symptoms are getting the care that they need and are following the recommendations that they need to. So I think that piece is it's smooth, but it's very hard to predict exactly what you're saying of our students making sure that they're following through.
And this data is like a survey, right? Once a year, you do the survey, that's how you really get this information?
So the
except
state
for-
of health information primarily comes from registrations. Some of that data, the concussions, come from Molly and myself, keeping
it-
track of what transpires throughout the school year. So I guess the concussions don't include what happens over summer, but that's primarily data collected for the school year.
Are there any other questions? And you're still working on the health department, the health, Board of Health?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I serve on Franklin's Board of Health.
That's great.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much for your report.
thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8C is the Pupil Services Report. Mrs. Preeman.
All right. My technology works, thank you. I'd first of all like to thank Dr. Miller and the board for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm going to be covering two separate areas. One, we'll be talking about the pupil services staff, an update, talking about programs and services provided by pupil services, and followed by an update on the special education staffing and programs. You should have received in your board documents a 5-page display of different pieces of data around staffing as well as students. This is a summary of the pupil services part. The pupil services personnel refers to school counselors, social workers, professional personnel that are involved in providing assessment, diagnosis, counseling, education, therapeutic, and other necessary services, including people providing related services as defined by law. The goal of our pupil services staff is to increase academic achievement and help students become confident, caring, and contributing citizens. I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of areas that may be unfamiliar to you, one being orientation and mobility services. We currently contract with a group called Low Incidence Consulting, and this is a service that is provided to our students with visual impairments. The orientation and mobility specialist will work with the students to learn to navigate the school environment as well as the outdoors, accessing community places. A lot of the students that would use this type of service are students that have a more significant visual impairment. We also have occupational and physical therapists that provide services to students, and it's very different, the type of services that they provide in the school setting versus services that are provided by outside practitioners. Their goal is to make students able to access the school environment, so they may provide services that allow students to have the skills needed to be safe in navigating the hallways, playing on playground equipment, climbing stairs, for occupational therapy using different writing implements, materials in art classes. We also have an educational diagnostician that works with the district to do initial evaluations for students that are suspected of having a disability. We do have, just forgot to mention too, we do have 2 social workers in the district, one that focuses on elementary and the other that is located primarily at the high school.
And this staffing's been fairly stable?
Very stable. This year, we did make one change in the school counselors. We still have 4 counselors at the high school and 2 at the middle school, but have created a different role for the elementary position, and we now have a systems specialist, which was Catherine Reed, which spoke here earlier today, and she is coordinating our services K through 12. Our pupil services staff provide services in 3 primary areas. One is the identification of students needing specialized supports or intervention.
proactive supports that are designed to identify and resolve student adjustment, behavior, or learning issues before they become problems, and then intervention and responsive practices. And I'll explain some of the services that are offered in all three areas. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, is a federal law that requires school districts says that school districts have an affirmative duty to locate and identify students that may have special education needs. And school districts therefore have to take extraordinary steps to make sure that they're correctly identifying students with disabilities. And this responsibility is referred to as child find. And so the district engages in activities that involve screening and evaluation of students to identify students at an early age with the purpose of providing early intervention. Each school in our district has a student services team where teachers can bring concerns that they have regarding students. These teams look at student data. The teams are comprised of a variety of different school professionals that will address student needs and plan for proactive supports, and if needed, then refer the child on for further evaluation. In the fall of each year, we have something called Child Development Days, and it's a collaborative effort between the Franklin Health Department and the school district. And it's a 3-day event where students, families are notified by the health department of the event and can call and schedule appointments to bring their children in. And they do a variety of different things from assessing vision, they do BMI, they do academic screenings, social screenings, and screenings for communication. The district also has a duty to accept parent referrals and act on referrals from members of the community or physicians. Some of the proactive supports that are provided by the pupil services personnel are in the areas of RTI and PBIS. Our school psychologists coordinate both of these efforts in their buildings. These proactive supports are available to students demonstrating a need. On these student services teams, the school psychologists will engage in discussions with other school staff in the areas of math, reading, and behavior. They will review student data and make determinations of students needing further interventions, or in some cases, students who may need services outside of that or additional evaluations. Other proactive educational programs, these are programs that are supported by our school counselors, one being academic and career planning, and I know you've heard a lot of discussions about that over the past couple of years, as well as programming to support social and emotional learning. And I'd like to get you up to date on where we're at with that. So in recent months, you have heard parents address the board, as well as discussion from staff members in reference to social and emotional learning. Some of you may not be fully familiar with this term, so I'd like to just take an opportunity to describe this. Social and emotional learning, or sometimes referred to as SEL, is a process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. Many consider SEL instruction to be analogous with whole child education. In recent years, there has been a growing recognition that social and emotional learning skills are essential to student success. Schools and communities are seeking the most effective ways to teach, reinforce, and develop these skills in learners. And if you look at this diagram, you can see that this is not an isolated event that is led only by school personnel. fully engages family and community resources. SEL is not a thing or a set curriculum, but rather a set of educational practices that are designed to support the whole child. We do have different practices that are currently happening in our schools. So in Franklin, we have, for example, protective behavior lessons. We have a joint effort between the school district and the Franklin Police Department to educate students on child abuse and self-protection. We have some schools that are teaching students explicitly, a whole classroom led by some of our school psychologists, teaching skills on emotional and self-regulation. These programs teach students strategies to become more aware of and independent in controlling their emotions, their impulses, taking care of their own sensory needs, and solving problems or solving conflicts. All of our schools have undergone Tier 1 training for school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. We also have restorative practices happening in some of our schools. This is largely a school counselor-run effort. Restorative practices are a framework for building community and responding to challenging behavior through authentic dialogue and coming to an understanding and making things right when things go wrong. School counselors teach restorative concepts and skills and use the power of restorative circles to set things right when there are conflicts that may arise between individual students. Using these methods consistently has been found to significantly decrease classroom disruption and to help create a calmer, more focused classroom. We also have bullying prevention programs that are offered at the 5th and 6th grade level. And we have pupil services staff engaging in explicit instruction in social skills, both in small group and individual. So recognizing that although we have some programs in place, we do have much to do in further expanding and developing social emotional practices and learning for our students. We are using a 4-year plan. It looks like 5 according to this because we did get some of our work started last year, but a 4-year plan addressing social and emotional learning. And before starting something new, we felt that it was important to review what already exists and to see what the district had in terms of existing resources. This year, we're engaging in exploration. The format that we're using is also being used by the Department of Public Instruction as a method of implementing evidence-based practices. It's called implementation science. So what you see here is a 4-year plan. This year, our team is engaged in exploration. We're looking at existing sources of data. We're looking at student behavioral data and trends. We're also engaging teachers, the community, to give input into our plans moving forward. Next year, we expect that we will begin training our first teachers, identifying sources for training, and establishing fidelity assessment tools. I want to emphasize that although this is a 4-year plan for implementation that isn't completed until the year 2020, changes and enhancements in programs are starting currently and will continue throughout this 4-year cycle.
I have a question.
Sure.
I know we just had the health side of things, and you talked about social and emotional learning.
Right.
Where does the current issue of mental health issues in the school fit?
So,
Is it a health thing, or is it a emotional learning thing?
both. Social emotional learning in practice is really what we call a Tier 1 or a universal support for students. So a lot of the work can be addressed through universal means, where we're teaching students to solve conflicts, to develop healthy habits, and effective ways of managing stress and emotions, recognizing that there are students that need more. So we have students that we have already identified as students that may have emotional or mental health challenges. And those students are currently receiving supports and help. So if we have a student, for example, that may have been reported to have, had hospitalization, our pupil services staff will work with the student and the family to reintegrate them back into school, maybe after a hospitalization, or to provide additional help and support. So it's a combination. We have a variety of mental health professionals that work with students, so it would be our school psychologists, our social workers, and our school counselors. And it may also be our school nurses, depending.
But we don't do screening, like, there's vision screening, but there's not, I don't know, mental health screening of any kind.
Well, there are practices out there. There's some debate on whether or not it's an effective way to identify students through some screening practices, but it is something that we are taking a look at.
Part of your looking
Or your
forward.
study, yes. Okay. Oh, this is kind of hard to see, so I will see what I can do to read this to you. I'm sorry, it's kind of tiny. So I'll tell you about some of the things that have happened. So in September, we developed a calendar for cell implementation and conducted a priority assessment. On Friday, we have a consultant from the Department of Public Instruction that will be coming in to work with our pupil services staff to talk about the study of teacher practices and integration of social emotional learning into the content areas. In November, we will be sending out surveys to teachers and begin classroom observations, looking at how CEL is currently being implemented in grade level instruction. In December, we will begin our CEL program research, looking at evidence-based practices. In February, we will be getting a stakeholder group together to develop a vision for CEL programming in the schools and get input from parents, students, higher education, community members, and making sure that we have, through our other forms of study, pinpointed the correct areas for instruction. And then in March and April, we will be finalizing some of our evidence-based practices and make sure that they're aligned with the priority areas that we've identified. And in May, we will be able to communicate our plans moving forward. And this is something that we had just talked about briefly, but let me get into. We also offer responsive services to students, so it may be assessments, screenings, evaluations. We have health and nursing services. We offer crisis intervention services for students, as well as teen parent support. Moving on to special education. The special education department, if you want to call it that, supports and executes the vision of Franklin Public Schools through the demonstration of the core belief that we hold high expectations for all learners and that all students are capable of achieving at a high level. And some of the actions that support these core beliefs are students are served in what is considered the least restrictive educational environment, with the presumption being that students will be in the general education classroom to the greatest extent possible. We also create goals that are ambitious but achievable, and this is done in the student's individualized education plan. We believe that it's a shared responsibility to share resources and knowledge to benefit all students, so we have a high degree of collaboration between general and special education. A consistent focus on college and career readiness for all students regardless of label. And we promote the belief that Franklin Public Schools should be a welcoming place that supports diversity and a culture that supports inclusion. In our district, we run 2 early childhood programs, one at Ben Franklin, one at Southwood Glen, and we have 2 teachers supporting that with morning and afternoon programming. We have speech pathologists in each building, as well as additional personnel that are assigned to support our early childhood students. We contract for services with a teacher of the hearing impaired. We have 35 cross-categorical teachers serving students with IEPs, plus we have 2 additional cross-categorical teachers which serve youth at the House of Correction. We contract with the teacher of the visually impaired. We have 3 physical education teachers that are licensed to provide adaptive physical education classes for students with disabilities. We have 3 special education system specialists that support teachers across the district. 50 educational assistants that are providing everything from attending care services to students as well as serving as educational supports. And we have 2 administrative support specialists, one that handles compliance and the other whose full-time job is to make sure I'm in the right place at the right time. She does Medicaid billing as well.
Just one question.
Sure.
The copy we have here says 0.25 FTE for adapted PE.
Oh,
Is it
yeah,
3?
if I break it down in terms of the amount of time, these are physical education teachers that have general education responsibilities. 0.25 of their time, thank you for clarifying that, is dedicated to supporting students with IEPs in separate programming. This is just a breakdown of the different disability areas. There are 14 different disability categories that students can qualify for services under. Currently, we have 451 students identified as students with disabilities, and you can see from this graphic that a majority of our students fall into 3 basic categories of students with speech and language impairments, other health impairments, or specific learning disabilities. Significant developmental delay applies to students aged 3 through 9 that show generalized delays that have not yet been fully identified and falling into another disability category. We have a small number of students that have an intellectual disability or hearing impairment. A rather substantial number of students that also fall with the disability label of autism. This graphic represents the educational environment where students are provided with services. The blue indicates the number of students who are in the general education classroom 80% of the time or greater, and we take great pride in the fact that we're able to support students in the classrooms that they would otherwise attend if not disabled. A very small number of students are in programs placed outside the district. We do have some students, though, that through the IEP team process are identified as students that require additional placement services. And so these, I know some of them, you have to act on them at the, through the board in terms of paying for these services. We do have, I believe, 7 students that are currently served outside the district. One that I'd like to highlight is pictured. It's Project Search. It's an initiative led by Easter Seals of Southeast Wisconsin in partnership with Children's Hospital, Waukesha Memorial, and Freighter, and the Department of Vocational Rehab. And this is a program, it's a year-long internship of professional work in a professional work environment. And the goal is that a student will leave this program with marketable, competitive, and transferable skills that will lead to employment. And so we have our first student this year participating in this very special program. Franklin Public Schools receives money, federal monies, that have to be shared with students that are attending private and parochial schools. So in the Franklin community, the schools listed are schools that have been designated as private schools, and they get a proportionate share of our funding. And annually, we meet with the directors or the principals from these schools and make a determination of how they would like for us to support their students through funding. So we're actually meeting with them in a couple of weeks, and historically, they have asked for speech and language services. So we have our speech pathologists that will go out to the schools and provide direct student services for students identified with speech and language needs.
How are they identified?
They are identified through the school district. Part of our child find requirement extends to the private schools. So if a teacher or a parent believes that a child has a disability, they will refer them to the district and we will assess them and then provide them with services. We provide services for students under a service plan, grades K4 through 4th grade currently. Okay, I'd like to conclude. In Franklin, we hold the belief that children can achieve at a high level, and because of this deeply held belief, we practice inclusive programming that allows students to receive the same rigorous education that all students receive, but in a supportive environment that supports their specific learning needs and provides them with specialized instruction that they need to be successful. To accomplish this, our special and general education teachers co-plan and co-teach. This way, students have exposure to and an opportunity to achieve grade-level academic standards similar to their peers. I'd like to thank Southwood Glen for contributing to this presentation tonight by highlighting their inclusive philosophy and programs that they use to meet student needs. So please enjoy.
At Southwood Glen, we really do live out an inclusive culture. So what that means is that all kids really deserve to have the opportunity to be successful, whatever their needs and whatever their strengths may be. So that means for us as a staff that all means all. So we really need to come together and collaborate on behalf of all students. So when it comes to special ed in particular, our special ed teachers really do get to know their students very well and design plans that really do target specific student needs and utilizing specific strategies. And that's one piece of it. Then the next piece is that's really important is the co-planning piece. So the special education teacher comes together with the general education teacher as well as educational assistants and anyone else who works with that student to develop plans so that students with IEPs are able to really have an engaging and meaningful opportunity to learn alongside their peers, and also to make sure that they are contributing members of their classroom community as well. And again, the basis of that really does come down to our common beliefs, our shared beliefs that all children can learn, and we really do presume competence. So it's just a matter of really working hard to figure out what students need and how we can build on their strengths in order to make sure that they are successful here in the classroom.
Are you hot lunch or cold lunch? Cold lunch. Yeah.
best things about our classroom that we share together is that it really is shared responsibility in the classroom. Even though I am the regular ed 6th grade teacher, I don't see myself as only the teacher of the regular education students, as same thing with Amber only having her kids or the special ed students as hers. We really share all of the students, and we take that shared responsibility of all of the students and really their ultimate success in our classroom.
So likewise, I really enjoy working with Taylor, and being in a co-taught classroom, a co-serving environment, I think really benefits all students. Specifically, the special education students have access to both of us at all times. They have access to the same curriculum as their regular education peers, and we have seen a lot of growth in all of our students. And like Taylor already mentioned, I not only service my students that would be considered on my caseload in special education, but I also am rotating throughout the classroom and helping anybody who might need assistance in the classroom. So I see really a lot of benefit to what we're doing here at Southwood Glen.
And one of the ways that we really make sure to do that is that we try to meet twice a week to really go ahead and co-plan the lessons that we're going to be doing together, and not just us like kind of separately saying what our roles are going to be, but also knowing and being on the same page about who are our kids, what are their needs, and how can the both of us together address those needs in the classroom. So that's really where that co-planning piece comes in, so that we can ultimately co-instruct the students, whether it be large group, small group, one-on-one conferences, and that's really been super successful for us and ultimately our students.
And I would say just in general here, we have a philosophy that all children should be able to access the curriculum all over the place in every subject area, and that we really embrace learning for all and co-serving everybody at the same time.
I like staying by my friends because they can always have my back, and I always have their back, and I can always ask for help from them, and they can always ask for help from me, so we can always stick together and help each other.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Just General Julie, thanks for the presentation. It was quite exhaustive. But if we go back to kind of the social emotional slide,
Yes.
you showed kind of a 4 years process of implementation of an initiative. Do you feel like 4 years is potentially too long for a review to implementation process, when someone could have entered high school and graduated by the time that something could have been implemented, or during growth years of 5th grade to graduating 8th grade, and they haven't yet experienced what we're planning to implement during those times?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I think it's a fair question to say, that this is a protracted period of time. We will begin implementation, in addition to some of the practices that we have beginning next year. One of the things that we have found through our study currently is that when things are done quickly or are not done in collaboration and building from programs that currently exist, is that they tend to fade and die out. What the Department of Public Instruction that we've been working with currently is strongly advising is that we do something called thread and embed. So that means that starting, currently we are going to start implementing practices into things that currently exist. So into our classrooms, as an example, what are some ways that we can start talking about some of these different social and emotional learning pieces and making them part of practice in what we do on a daily basis? I anticipate that we're going to have many pieces in place during that time. I think in looking out and projecting out 4 years, what we're looking at is that everything then will be finalized and in place. But in education, nothing is ever done. It's always a cycle of continual implementation and review. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I would to have it across the entire district, I look at it as being a plan that is happening in phases throughout that 4-year period.
And I would say, it's not that we're not doing anything now. I mean, we've always had some of these programs. We all had kids, well, some of us have had kids where I know they would have programs on how to deal with conflict. There's been programs in the schools in the past. Maybe it just hasn't been as strategically focused. As we know more and more about this, maybe it'll be more strategic and more effective. But we've had things, and we currently do things even now. It's just a matter of looking at it.
Correct.
And I noticed that you have, I mean, school counselors are half of your team that you're expecting to do this, and they've just redid the whole career and education, so they're doing that also?
Correct.
So-
Well, we are meeting this Friday. We're engaging our entire pupil services staff, so it'll be a collaborative effort with our school psychologists, school counselors, and our social workers. And so there are a lot of different working pieces that we have, but we have a big training piece in terms of training teachers and teaching them ways to incorporate social emotional learning into, their literacy classrooms and math programs and things that they do for students.
One question. How often are we audited by DPI, Special Ed Department?
5-year cycle.
What do
Yes.
you do next?
So it was done 2 years ago. They've adjusted the cycle a little bit. I think that we are actually up for review in 2020. And they've amended it a little bit, that they look at compliance as well as student performance indicators. So that'll be a change.
I really enjoyed your report. It was nice to hear from you. We
Great.
haven't
Well, thank you, and
heard
thank
from
you.
Special Ed for a long time.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Can I just ask one follow-up?
Absolutely.
Because you have RTI on your plate,
Mhm.
which is not special ed.
Correct.
My understanding is it's not special ed.
It is not special ed.
Or is it between the cracks here, though? Or, I mean, it'd be nice if you could, take responsibility for it, so that, I don't know how we see it accounted for on the regular ed side. So where is it?
Well, it falls in that gray area. Response to intervention is a requirement for students who will later be identified as students with a specific learning disability. So in order for a student to qualify, they have to go through an RTI process.
But they don't all become special ed.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely
Some-
not. The idea is
lot
to
of-
intervene early, so hopefully that we can find solutions to student learning challenges that wouldn't require that.
Because we have data of how many are special ed, and I know it's a tiered system. How many are in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? Do you track that?
Yeah, all students are in Tier 1.
Oh.
It's universal instruction. Tier 2, actually, I oversee the programming of RTI, and once they go to referral, then they're referred to Julie's department because they are receiving special education services at that point through the referral process. So even this morning, I met with our elementary principals and interventionists for literacy to review our first 8 weeks of data and look at numbers of students. And we're somewhere under 30 students at the elementary level, K-6 for intervention, and it's about a handful to 10 students at the middle school level. For literacy specifically, our math numbers are much lower.
Okay. so
And that's
no-
students receiving Tier 2 and Tier 3 services.
Okay, thank you. Just,
Any other questions? Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Item 8D is the 2017-18 tax levy update and approval of the 2017-18 budget. Mr. Milzer.
Well, tonight we have the third and final draft of the 17-18 budget. On the first two drafts, we always talked about the fact that it was based entirely on estimates, most of those estimates coming from back in March when the information came together. This budget has been updated based on actual staff that was hired, actual number of students. We increased by 75 students in headcount this year. And the good news is we'll receive approximately $462,000 more in equalization aid than we had planned on in the last draft of the budget. So the tax levy, we had it at a 1.5% increase. It drops to 1.1. which is about $14 per $100,000. And that's especially important because this is the first year that the debt for Forest Park and the construction of Forest Park comes online. And we had estimated during the referendum and told people it could be as high as $65 just for that debt. And through reductions and moves we've made, we brought it down to that $14. So it's really great news for the district for this year. Additionally, we had talked about in the previous versions of the budget whether the state budget was going to come through with additional per pupil funding, and that did go all the way through the budget. So we did get an additional $100 per student, and we had, for that purpose, they count students differently. You get an average based on your revenue limit number. So we were up about 18 students for that count as well. So it was an additional $428,000. So in that line item went from about 1.4 to 1.8 million on the per pupil categorical aid. The operations tax levy went down about $117,000 from what we had last year, and that's part of that big picture. It's important to note that the city did a reassessment this year, and that it wasn't an even reassessment on how it turned out. The average was a 5% increase, but the range was minus 10% to plus 27%. So when people get their tax bills, if you have someone saying, hey, you said it was a 1.1% increase and mine, went way up, they're probably in the 27% category. So that piece we can't control. The city does the reassessment based on values and sales of homes in the area, and that's just kind of how it works out. And there is a general shift in that reassessment to residential paying a higher percentage of the tax burden for the community. Let's see, the last thing I wanted to say, I did want to have this to you sooner than today, but I did run into multiple software problems. The budget itself was worked out really well, but I had some upload problems. We ended up hand entering hundreds of budget accounts a couple of times to get through this, but we've got it tonight for you to vote on. And again, the board needs to adopt the budget in the adoption format so that we can certify the tax levy to the city.
From what I understand, the city is going to do a reevaluation every year now.
Oh, are they?
That's what
That should help
stated.
cut out that changing so much. The more often you do it, the changes should be smaller.
So you had mentioned $100 extra per student from the state, and that's $100 over what you were estimating, because you had estimated 100, but
Right.
you really came in at 200.
Right.
And then the second year of the biennium is going to be another 204.
Yes.
So that's a big number for next year. You're looking at extra debt reduction, and where did the extra 100 go this year? Did it go into long-term debt, or did it just go down and lower the levy, or?
Yeah, not for long-term debt. We've got a number of projects that we'd like to do, so generally at this point, any additional funds that we have, we don't want to say, oh, look, we have a ton of money right now, let's hire a lot of staff, and then we don't have that money anymore. So we have that enormous list of buildings and grounds needs and projects and things that our schools need. So that's what we're working at with the additional funds. And then that's able to be easily pared back as other needs arise, and we need those funds in the future, because we don't receive or aren't allowed to get enough money to actually pay for everything we're doing to even keep pace with inflation. So we have to be very careful about that.
And so that'll be part of Mark's presentation in December, over
Right.
some of the projects he's looking at doing.
So I hear you saying you've added projects since we last saw this budget?
We're including projects in this, and we did have projects included in this as well. There's also staffing that went up on a number of different fronts, because we had said we planned our budget based on 10 students and we got 75. And I think, as you've heard lately, that 75 didn't come out distributed evenly they tend to come in pockets to the point where even after the school year started, and it happens sometimes, they just seem to know exactly where we have a lot of students, and if they come there, we're going to have to get another teacher, and by gosh, they did it this year. We're having to add another teacher at this point, which we don't usually do. It doesn't happen very often, but it has happened before, where they just come in that spot, and then we end up hiring. So we did hire more staff than we had anticipated in both teachers and aides.
I asked you a question earlier today about voucher students and the impact of them on our district. So we can be, there could be a deduction of up to $346,000 for this school year.
Right.
So that's taken out of our aid. And so it's a hidden tax that our taxpayers don't really ever see. It's taken, it really is a hidden tax. They don't really see it.
Yeah, it was something when the program started that the state was paying for and finding the money for it. I'm not sure how they were doing that, if they were taking it away from school districts some other way, but now it's kind of right up front, and that it's being charged to each school district, running kind of like the open enrollment program does, but still just slightly different.
So where does it show on here for us? It'll show in the unaudited actual next year? I mean, how do we?
Right.
So that.
Yeah.
So it never has its own line so that taxpayers see this was voucher students.
Right. And the Milwaukee Charter Program is the same way. That comes off before we ever get our money, and that takes even more from us than that. I think that's over $200,000 this year that's taking away from Franklin.
So it's based on a number of students that have chosen to.
Right.
How many is that? You had 100,000? How many?
I don't know.
A range, I guess?
No, I really don't know on that one. This is kind of brand new territory on how they're doing it. I think last year was the first year, and then they make the adjustment at the end.
So it's tied to very specific district data.
Right.
But some districts have to raise their levy to recoup that money.
So what was the amount?
But it's not district managed, right? Sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
It's managed by the state.
Right.
We get a sum, we get X. They subtract Y, we get that sum, is what we see. We don't manage any part of it.
Right.
What was the amount of the capital projects that we were, last December, that we were gonna do? You have that, you have an $800,000 number
About
figured?
800, yeah.
So now we have an extra 462. Is that where some of the money for the new teacher we had to hire can come out of that?
Yeah, for the new teachers and additional costs in benefits that we didn't have in an earlier version. So some of that is going in that direction as well.
And if your estimate was closer to what we really were gonna get, $100, not $200, then that'd have been a fund balance adjustment or something for some of these expenses?
Right. I mean, we could always decide, and we will, we do that every year. We will be putting money to fund balance at the end of this year. There's no doubt about it. We're not showing that out there, that this money is definitely going to fund balance, but we will have money for that. And I think money that would be able to go to our Fund 46 at the end of this year.
That's the fund for future capital-type projects that we want to do. Okay, but that $800,000 capital project, that's roughly the number now? Or is that ballooned up because of this extra money?
It's bigger than that. I don't have a figure offhand for that, but it is bigger than that. We have a number
That
of
wouldn't
big
have been able to
projects
be
going on.
identified until the last couple weeks,
Right.
because we didn't know about the budget.
Right.
Do we have those projects identified as to
Yep.
what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, we have that list of projects, and then there's always the projects that we're definitely doing, and then there's the projects that if we get enough money, we'll do, and then there's also things that happen that, like, wow, yep, that roof is failing faster than we thought, or something's leaking, and we need to get on that if at all possible right away. So those types of things.
All right, thank you.
So I'm looking for a motion. Do you want me to include draft 3 in the motion?
Draft 3 adoption format.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the 27-18 budget draft 3 adoption.
Adoption format. Mhm.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please? Mr. Alexandrovich.
Yes. Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Gamble.
Aye.
Mrs. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Aye.
And I say yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you for your work. Again, manually. Okay. Item 8E is the Forest Park Construction Report. Mr. Milzer.
The excavation and site work, as you can see, is continuing. In addition, they've started putting in the footings and the foundation pads out there. You can see that they've done a part of the building already. That'll continue until roughly the beginning of November, first week of November, when they should be done with that, and they'll move on or start the masonry walls and the stairwells and the elevator shaft and that kind of construction. The construction milestone schedule I included on this item was requested earlier, and we tried to put that together as something that you can identify and see when you're looking at it, or what to expect at that point in time. And so that's kind of where it is. They've been working hard on that. The pile of dirt goes up and down kind of daily as they dig it out and haul it away.
Mr. Cloutier said he spent 3 hours on looking at plans today?
Yes.
Just on the gym?
And that was just today. That was just, yeah, the gym walls and the embedded utilities that are in them to make sure that everything is in the spots that we need it when it arrives.
Any questions? Thank you. Item 8F is the treasurer's report is located in the board docs library. We'll move on to item 9, school board liaison reports. 9A, the personnel and policy programs for English language learners and aiding and abetting of sexual abuse. Action item, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. So we have 2 policies before you tonight, which is policy 4500 and 6210. Both policies are, 4005, not 4500. Both policies are new as part of the WASB review. Tick and tie back and forth. These obviously were policies that we didn't have or are implementing tonight. Hopefully everyone took a look at them, but I'll make a motion to approve policy 6210, English language learners.
Motion by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Is there any discussion?
Just how many students are impacted by policy? Roughly how many?
That's a great question. 218.
218?
Identified
to answer,
ESL, EL students.
And how many teachers are,
Currently, we have 4 full-time teachers between the 7 buildings, and we've posted for a half-time position we're looking to fill within the next week. We've had a spike in the last year at Robinwood Elementary and Pleasant View of students that meet this identification.
Do we get special funding?
Our Title III budget is utilized for English language learners, so programming costs, and we hit trigger points at certain grade levels at Pleasant View Elementary So we, in last year's budget, we're still waiting for our Title III budget to be approved this year. We were able to hire a educational assistant that spoke dual languages to assist students of Arabic language at certain grade levels at Pleasantview.
So is this special ed? Is it regular ed? How does this fit into
This is
the?
English language learners, so it's students that are
Separate
identified
program?
that speak, English as a second language.
My only comment when I was reading this, and everyone has said it tonight so far in talking about it, references English language learners, ELL, but doesn't it read EL in the policy?
Yes, so a student is now identified through DPI with the language of EL as an English learner.
Just changed.
Changed last year.
It changed last year.
Okay. So we all have
Programming
to
is-
learn what we learned and also just call it EL.
And then it'll change
New,
again.
yeah, shorter acronym.
Yeah, just to speak to the diversity, we have 35, of the 218 students, there's 35 languages
Oh, it
that
used
are
to be like
spoken,
26, now it's 35, wow.
with Arabic being the most prevalent, and Spanish right behind that.
Aren't we all English learners?
That is the question I have asked many times as well. Yeah.
Wow.
This is a pretty straightforward policy, so.
So
And
EL.
just a question on item F, after the 2-year monitoring period, 2 years, what's magic about 2 years? Is that a state thing? or-
That's what the Department of Public Instruction has advised.
Oh.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you. So, secondly and lastly, I'll make a motion to approve policy 4005, employment reference and verification relating to aiding and abetting of sexual abuse.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Larson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And now we'll move on to item 9B, School Board Liaison Reports. Are there any regular liaison reports tonight? If not, we'll move to 9C, School Visits. And I know we have several tonight. Do we want to go, I think, Mr. Alexandrovich, you want to go first? You had one last time that you
Sure.
wanted to give tonight.
I went to Pleasant View, met with Jamie Feckler. We took a tour of the school, and the thing I found most interesting was, they redid the playground area because of the drainage problems. I didn't realize that one of the issues was that there was a playground structure that the kids used, but before they did this, it was enclosed, and at the back of it, there was like a 6-foot drop. And he says kids would fall off of there, and a couple times a year, they would get hurt, and I didn't even realize that was something that we were fixing. They also had to move a retention pond over and work with the DNA, and it looks really good, but the idea of the safety of the kids, that kind of hit me, that 6-foot drop, and how long did it take us to get rid of that? Okay, we are all justly chastised on that. We talked about some of the things that are happening in the area, and Faith Lutheran came to them and said, "What can we do for you?" Little church there. He said, "They're not that big," and they talked about bringing in some healthy foods for breakfast. And once a month, they bring in all kinds of healthy foods, fruit, et cetera, for the children, so they can have something for breakfast. And they also gave a $250 donation for books. And I thought that was kind of interesting that they're coming here to help us. And Jamie mentioned they just have an exceptional teaching staff there. He's really happy. School looked great, active. Everybody looked like they're having a good time learning.
I know Southbrook Church, I think it might be Robinwood, they do like teacher lunches, and then Victory of the Lamb is now partnering with Country Dale to do things like that too, so, yeah. Well,
Good.
nice. Thank you. Mr. Lewis, did you want to go next?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going to combine 9B and 9C.
I have one from Country Dale. On October 20th, I visited Mrs. Sneed's class, her fifth grade students. She was having a literacy celebration, and I participated in the morning and the afternoon sessions for Mrs. Sneed's and Mrs. Tav's homeroom classes. And the students and their guests listened to the students share their personal narrative writing. And the guests included parents. Mr. Cohn was there for the afternoon, and Mrs. LaPlante, and then myself. And the students broke off into small groups, and each student shared their writing with their groups. And then we critiqued by complimenting the students on specific criteria that they accomplished, such as story ideas that were internal thinking, precise language, figurative language, which I was told that they had worked very hard on, and then they visualized what they shared, and they learned how to give lead-ins, and then dialogue, helping them express how they felt, and then presenting ideas such as good eye contact, how they prepared for the day, and strong reading skills. And practicing in these small groups, especially in front of strangers, helped them to get confidence. And they were more comfortable at the end of the exercise. And it was nice to bond with them in these small groups, and sharing compliments between each other really helped them. And I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience for me. And I got to chat a lot with the students because I got there early for each session, and it was a good day. So
How long was the session?
each one was 45 minutes, but I was there maybe 20 minutes early for each one, so I got to spend a little more time. Right.
I also visited with Sarah Edbauer, who's the new principal at Ben Franklin. I went the night that they had parent-teacher conferences. I can't remember how it was like when I had that. It was always a mad rush. I thought, where am I going to park, you know? I just drove right in, lots of parking spaces. People schedule these things now. How nice. And it's a quiet building, and she's just sitting there quietly waiting for me to get there. I did not see a lesson, but she did show me a video of a student that was reading their work, because I tried to explain to her that there was a thing as basal readers when we learn to read. And she also helped me get her Twitter page feed on my phone, so now I'm doing the Twitter thing. So that was my school visit.
Did you download Twitter specifically for that, or?
I had already had to
Okay.
download it. I just wasn't sure what the next step was, so she helped me with that. And now I understand there's other people I can follow, too.
Just a couple.
Just a couple?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on my way.
You're 2 steps ahead of me.
We'll take care of that.
Alan still has a flip phone. So I have a couple. First, in order to combine 9B and 9C, I met with Ms. Ellihausen last week for our HR liaison review. We met for roughly, close to an hour and a half of kind of talking about her experiences and relations with previous boards, kind of goals for her role and expectations between the two of us and what a liaison truly is. So I found it to be a very productive and well worth hour and a half worth of discussion. Secondly, last Tuesday, when I was unable to attend the WASB conference, I was tapped to give a speech, but at the same time, I was able to be at the high school and walk through the conferences that were going on at the time, which was entertaining and educational. Not only thought back to conferences that I had myself, but to see the immense engagement from parents and you know, 1 or 2 spirited conversations here and there. So it was very interesting to see. And then finally, with some of the information that's on the website directly, I went to the middle school yesterday and met with Ms. King, Erin King, principal. We talked for about 15, 20 minutes, but I got there a bit earlier, so I was able to attend almost the full first class that we had scheduled. So I went through a 7th grade science class with Ms. Fossbender, a 7th grade math class with Mr. Zomberitz, and an 8th grade global studies class with Mr. Brandis. In each one of the sessions, I found it ridiculously educational to sit through some of the coursework that they were doing, but to a lot of the credit that Nick and Chris are doing here with changing how instruction is actually provided, I think it's really interesting, coupled with the presentation on the new middle school on innovative and flexible learning spaces, from a science class that started out with looking at cultures to basically being in 4 to 5 person groupings, which was not conducive to looking at cultures, to then going through a grafting exhibit on a projection screen and working basically one-on-one with graphs and how to identify problems or different graphs to describe, to depict different pieces of information. So I found that very interesting. And then switching over to the 7th grade math class, which was a much smaller class, but it was very interesting in the depth that we went into to describing percentages. We went through an exercise of finding square footage of a house remodel and calculating overages, and then going to external sources like Home Depot and Menards on what that price would actually look like, and then trying to compete with prices within the class.
So smaller, how much smaller?
So the
Size?
first class was actually 32 students, the second class was 18. And I'll make a point later on. And then the third class, Global Studies, had 27 by at the end of the class with people coming in, had close to 30, but I was counting as I was leaving. And that class was actually based on an immigration study, or a section of the coursework, so it was very timely. He was basically using a 1920s political cartoon to describe the time in 1920 and what was going on post-World War I in Europe and immigration to the U.S., but then how that translated to today's world, and how very similar and how eerily similar that political cartoon could have been used in the papers today. So it was very interesting to see that, and then each group of students did their own vocabulary work, and then wrote a group story based on their vocabulary words, which was then based on the immigration coursework. So very interesting. I'll say this in terms of what we've gone through in terms of looking at hiring a new teacher throughout the school year, which really I haven't seen yet, to basically looking at one science teacher with 32 kids to one math teacher with 18 kids. And although it might be averaged out to being 48 divided by 2 and it looks like a class of 24, a class of 32 is frankly ridiculous. I actually would be a champion and be very supportive of relooking at our policy to almost stating class by class should be no larger than 28 with a 10% overage, so a class would be maxed at 30. Because frankly, Ms. Fossbender's class was a large class, but it's also a very large classroom. So it didn't look that cramped. It didn't look that small. When I looked across the hall and she noted that the class across the hall had the same amount of students, but had about 50% of the space that she has, it was frankly, where students were sitting on the floor rather than desks, it was sad to see that for 50 minutes during and it was a science class, to say let's look at some cultures in that same classroom versus Ms. Fossbender's classroom that had the space to hold some of the materials. It was hard to see, and I know that's an old space and we're moving away from it, but now with a new space, it's something that we can use as a differentiator between districts, as a differentiator with new academic space. But even at a high school level class, where someone is maybe a more individual and can operate and function more in a silo, you maybe don't need that one-on-one treatment, but we're preaching one-on-one. We're preaching individualized learning, and I don't know frankly, how that occurs with a class of 32. I think at that point, it's a pipe dream to say that we're going to have individualized learning, a one-on-one relationship with 32 kids. And I know that's not the same class size from session to session or from hour to hour, but it was tough to see when kids are raising their hands for questions, and yes, we were able to address those questions, but now with 32 kids, that one question might create 2 or 3 additional questions. And so it was an eye-opener for me to actually see a class that had that intense of a curriculum topic, like looking at a culture tray and then totally shifting to a graphing exercise with using a projector, to now you have 32 kids moving around a room, handing in, and at the end of the class, we did this, I took a picture of it, but it's, I forgot what it was called. It's an exit slip. So by the end of the class, it's an ungraded test, basically, to see what the kids have learned throughout that class. Each kid took it for about 10 minutes, handed it in, and then it was redistributed for grading or adding comments. But even that, with kids moving around the room constantly and then wanting to go to the bathroom, and some kids had to go pray during that time, there was just so much movement. I found it hard to sit there and concentrate on looking at this when you have all this movement and you're looking up constantly on what's going on around you. So like I said, I think some of these issues will be solved with the new school, new facilities, but I don't think that gets to the underlying issue of ensuring that we can be successful at what we want to be successful at.
How did the teacher feel about it?
It was a comment that I made about the size of the class, and I was thanked for asking, and it was expressed as that's a concern.
So, okay.
And obviously we know if we have 2 different classes from 32 to 18, if it's scheduling, and we can deal with it. But if it's, we have 4 different science classes that occur at the same time, and that's where all the students have to go, it's obviously a problem.
Thank you. Any other reports? Okay.
I just have one comment. I think some of that would, without being there and without really knowing the mix, I think it really would come down to the mix of the students that are there. How many people need more instruction? How many people need less? I think that's going to always be a fine line and balance. You're talking about one-to-one. Some people can get one-to-one without having to be one-to-one with the teacher. So I think your point's valid, but I don't know quite how easy it is to put a blanket statement over something like that without getting a lot more feedback than that one instance. So, but I understand what you're saying, though. That's your first look at it. That easily could be a takeaway.
Well, so, I'd almost describe it as, it wasn't my first look, right? We've talked about this all the time. We talked about it with our First Friday counts and about, we just heard about adding a teacher at Pleasant View because of class sizes. I think we've heard of it. We've heard about individualized instruction and trying to get the one-on-one relationship with teachers and shifting our curriculum, and we've seen the outcomes by those initiatives, by seeing increased test scores, increased participation. But it's almost from my understanding and from sitting in the classroom, it's almost like we're at an impasse of how hard can we push individualized learning and yet not address class sizes? Because it's almost like we can push it, that's fine. We're just not going to get to where we need to get in terms of that success because we have 30 to 32 kids in a class. While in the class size with 18, or the math class with 18 students, there was the ability for that teacher to walk around to each group, ask each kid, a group of kids, because they were working in groups of 2 or 3, questions related to the assignment. Then an aide showed up in that class. So now we had 2 individuals in that classroom with 18 students. So we just had additional support in that math class where, frankly, the 2 kids that I worked on this with were very proficient and were able, if they had a question, raise their hand. The teacher stopped everybody, brought up the smart board and worked through a problem that one person had that it seemed like everyone really kind of understood and worked with in order to solve the problem. But I don't know if that could have occurred in a class of 30 with one teacher.
Well, how do you view online learning? Is that personalized? That's not, it's a different metric. It's not just kids in the classroom, there's a whole different metric.
Right, I think it's a different platform too. It's not timed at 50 minutes. If you submit a question, you would expect an answer maybe not within that 50 minutes. And I know that even with a lot of the online learning we have, someone can submit an email to the teacher and the teacher can email you back. But in terms of the classroom environment, which obviously if we wanted to do a full online coursework, each student could sit at home and do the same coursework. But we're preaching that people should be in the classroom. I just feel like after experiencing just the science class that it's something that we potentially should reconsider. Or not necessarily reconsider, but discuss more openly on how can we address the issue of pushing individualized learning and yet ensure that our class sizes are consistent with our goal.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next item because it's turning into an agenda item now, but I think we all appreciate your report. Thank you. And there were no further reports, so we'll move on to future agenda items, item 10. Item A, new course approvals, November 8th. B, youth options requests, November 8th. C is public relations communications report, November 8th. D is building and grounds annual report, December 13th. E is the athletics activities report, December 13th. And that was it. And item 11 is the school board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments? Hearing none, just one comment. Megan, did you need to see any board members after the meeting? Okay. There was a little complication with the camera for your ID badges. If everyone can just stop in and see Megan back at your office?
Before you leave.
Yeah. It doesn't take long at all. So then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:16.